Today we'll be talking about cell biology, introduction to cell biology, and we'll be discussing or giving a summary of the various subtopics under cell biology. So we'll begin with cell structure and organization, then we'll move to cell processes, then we'll go to cell signaling and communication, then we'll come to molecular biology of cells, then we will continue with cell metabolism, then we'll talk about cell transport, then we'll bring it to an end at cell interaction and environment. So let's begin. So under cell structure and organization, we are basically discussing, or we'll basically talk about the structure and then the function or the organization of the cells. So basically the cell is divided into the plasma membrane, cytoplasm, the organelles, and then the nucleus. So under the plasma membrane, we'll talk about the membrane proteins, we'll talk about the structure and functions of the plasma membrane as well. Here we will discuss the fluid mosaic model of the plasma membrane, etc. Then we'll talk about the cytoplasm. Under the cytoplasm, we'll discuss the cytosol, the content of the cytosol. Then we'll talk about the cytoskeleton, which we have the actin filaments, the myosin filaments, and then the intermediate filaments within then this component forms the cytoskeleton. Then we will talk about the nucleus, we talk about the nuclear pore, we talk about the nucleoplasm, we talk about the nucleolus, then etc. So that will be for cell structure and organization. So we'll delve deeper into the structure of the cells, each functions of the structure of the cells, and then how they are organized. Then after this, we will go to cell processes. So under cell processes, we have cell division, we have cell cycles, we have cell growth, and then cell death. So these are the processes that cells undergoes. So we have cell division. Under cell division, we'll talk about mitosis, we'll talk about meiosis, we'll talk about cytokinesis. Then under cell cycle, we'll talk about all the phases of the cell cycle. Then we'll talk about how they are regulated as well. Then under cell growth and development, we'll delve into stem cells. We'll talk about how the cells are differentiated. Then under cell death, we'll talk about apoptosis, that is the natural death of cell, necrosis, cell or tissue damage by accident. We'll talk about autolysis, self-destruction of cells. We'll talk about autophagy, destruction of worn-out tissues. Then after getting a deeper understanding under cell processes, we'll come and talk about cell signaling and communication. So under this one, we have cell transduction, we have intercellular communication, then we have intracellular signaling pathways. So under cell signal transduction, we are basically going to talk about the receptors that are found on cells. We'll talk about the G protein coupled receptors. Then we'll talk about the receptor triose kinases. So these are the main receptors that we have that undergo cell signaling or signal transduction. Then under intercellular communication, we have the gap junctions, we have the synaptic signaling, then we have the endocrine signaling. Then under the intracellular signaling pathways, we will talk about the MAPK, the MI3K, AKT pathway, talk about the JAK or the JAK STAT pathway. Then under these signaling pathways ensure cell-to-cell communication. So that is basically what this signaling pathway does and cell communication does. Then we will talk about molecular biology of cells. And at this one, we'll talk about DNA replication, talk about the mechanism involved, the enzymes involved, and the replication forks. Then we'll talk about the transcription. All these ones is about protein synthesis, replication, transcription, translation, gene regulation. So under transcription, we talk about DNA polymerase, we talk about the transcription factors, then we talk about the regulation. Then under translation, we talk about the ribosomes, transfer RNA, messenger RNA, and then post-transitional modification. Then we'll talk about gene regulation, we'll talk about epigenetics, we'll talk about non-coding RNAs, then transcriptional and post-transcriptional control. So after we've gotten a deeper understanding of the molecular biology, then we'll talk about cell metabolism. So in cell metabolism is actually the energy changes that undergoes within the cell. The energy changes that undergoes within the cell, or the both anabolytic and catabolytic pathway. That is both building up of substances and breaking down of substances within the cell. So we'll talk about energy production. Under that, we'll discuss glycolysis. We'll talk about the Krebs cycle and oxidative phosphorylation. Then under biosynthesis pathway, we'll talk about how amino acids are synthesized. We'll talk about the nucleotide synthesis and then lipid metabolisms. Then under metabolic regulation, we'll talk about the feedback mechanisms. Talk about the feedback mechanisms, and then we'll talk about the hormonal control. So feedback mechanisms and hormonal control. Hormonal control. So after that, they will talk about cell transport. So on the cell transport, we'll talk about the active transport, passive transport, vesicular transport, and then membrane potential. So under active transport, we'll discuss the primary active transport, secondary active transport. Then we have the ATPases co-transporters. ATPases and co-transporters. Then under passive transport, we basically talk about diffusion, osmosis, and then facilitated diffusion. Then under vesicular transport, we'll talk about the endocytosis and the exocytosis. Under the endocytosis, we have pinocytosis, we have phagocytosis, then we have receptor-mediated endocytosis. After which, we'll talk about the membrane potential. We'll talk about the ion channels. We'll talk about the sodium and potassium pumps and how they are regulated. We'll talk about the membrane potential regulations too as well. Yeah. That is where we discuss the depolarization, repolarization, etc. Then, the last thing that we are going to discuss, but not the least, we'll talk about the cellular interaction and environment. So here we'll talk about the extracellular matrices, talk about their compositions, their functions, and their interaction with cells. Then we'll talk about cell adhesion, talk about cell junctions, talk about tight junctions. Under cell junction, we talk about tight junctions, desmosomes, and hemidesmosomes. Then cell migration, we talk about the mechanisms involved, talk about chemotaxis. Then we talk about role in development and then diseases. So basically, this is just a brief summary of what cell biology is. It's more or less like a flow chart or a mind map on our journey towards cell biology, or on our journey into cell biology. So after these ones, we are going to discuss topics like specialized cells and then application of cell biology in medicine. Those are external points or external topics that we're going to discuss after we are done with these ones. So understanding this one gives you a basic or a generalized overview of what cell biology really entails, so that when we are delving much deeper into the intricate aspects, you wouldn't find difficulty once you understand the basics. Okay. Thank you for joining us in this session. When we meet next time, we'll begin with cell structure and organization. That is where we'll